Welcome back, everybody. So considering India is now becoming a hub of globally relevant products, startups are now looking to go global. Over 42% of startups are looking to expand and tap into global markets in 2022. And over 64% of these startups are in the enterprise SaaS space. Recent years have witnessed several young startups going global after setting firm roots in India. So Indian startups have expanded their business overseas with great poise. Expanding globally helps create powerful international brand recognition. When that happens, audiences all over the world become familiar with the startup and its products, which can help boost sales, drive marketing, and expand potential markets even more. So has India truly turned into a springboard for the startups to reach international markets? Let's find out in this panel, which is moderated by Avishek Gupta, Investment Director, Caspian Impact Investment Private Limited, who is joined on the panel by Ajay Ramasubramaniam, Founder and CEO Startup Reseau, and Rajiv Babooram, Lead Professional Financial Services, Economic Development Board, Mauritius. So we were also expecting Ms. Raja Al-Mazrui from DIFC FinTech to join us in this panel. Unfortunately, due to a family tragedy, she could not be here today. FinTech Festival India stands with Raja and her family in these tough times. We will be keeping Raja and her family in our thoughts and prayers. With that said, we must carry on with the show. So over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali, and welcome everybody who's found the time to be with us on this panel discussion today. It is expected to be a fantastic discussion, because we have two panelists who are practitioners and experts in the business of helping companies expand or scale abroad or scale globally. What we understand, and like Gitanjali was mentioning, is that India has been a hotbed for technology-related startups and technology-related products in different areas. And it's not just the Indian markets, but also the markets beyond India that they have been set up to serve. What we are going to try and look at during this session today is try and understand what is it for fintech companies out of India, what is it that they should look for in the international market? Is it worth their effort to look at the international market beyond India? Which are the particular areas where these companies can deliver value? And what should these companies keep in mind before they hit the international market? So without wasting further time, let's start off this conversation. I would go first to Ajay. And Ajay, it would be of great help before we start any particular discussion why don't you talk about yourself and talk about a little bit about Startup Reseau and how you go about doing this very interesting work of helping startups, especially with, I know you do a lot of work across multiple sectors. So talk about that, but probably focus more on the fintech side of things that you do. So all over to you, Ajay.
Sure. Thank you, Avishek, for that wonderful note before we kick off the session and what we're going to talk about. And it's great to be here on this panel for FinTech Festival India. My name is Ajay Ramasubramaniam. I'm the founder and CEO at Startup Reseau. The name is half English and half French. The first one is the more easier one. We deal with startups as our key stakeholders. Reseau is a French word for network. And the network that we talk about are the four pillars on which our business is built. Enterprise, capital, markets, and services. And fintech, like you said, is very core to a lot of work that we do. Having been around for a few years working in the startup ecosystem, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of banks and financial service companies in setting up fintech accelerators. Currently with Startup Reseau as well, we run a couple of very focused fintech initiatives, one of them being Fintech OI or Fintech Open Innovation, which is a year-long initiative in which on a monthly basis we host 3 engagements, bringing together a community of almost 7,000 fintech stakeholders from emerging markets. Also, very recently we hosted an India FinTech Week, which brought in a lot of stakeholders from the Indian and emerging market fintech ecosystem. Also, we have worked with folks like the Royal Bank of Canada, there is Visa, folks with whom we have partnered in the past and set up very focused fintech initiatives. There are a couple of them that we are coming up with fairly soon as well. And currently we are operating an international India FinTech Market Access Program, its second edition, in fact, to enable growth stage companies from other markets who are looking at expanding into India. So think of it as a structured market access accelerator. So these are companies that have raised money, grown in their home markets, and looking at expanding into India. And we run an accelerator program basically to help them soft land in India. So that's as far as India is concerned. We also run very fintech focused boot camps and pre-accelerators in East Africa, which is another big market for us. But that's about me and what we do.
Thank you so much, Ajay. And I think that's a lot of things that you talked about, but it also gives me the opportunity to ask you a lot of questions, and probably the audience is also going to come back and ask you a lot of questions. So thanks for that. I'll move on to Rajiv. Rajiv, tell us about what you are currently busy with, and tell us a little bit about EDB and what the focus area is, especially in connection to FinTech, and also a little bit about the broader areas.
Absolutely, Avishek. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So as you said, my name is Rajiv Babooram, and I work at the Economic Development Board of Mauritius, which is a very important institution for the Mauritian government. So essentially, the EDB is the Trade and Investment Promotion Agency for the Mauritian government. We operate under the aegis of the Ministry of Finance, Economic Planning and Development. And our role is anchored on four items, which is strategic economic planning, business facilitation, trade and investment promotion, and country branding as well. Myself, I work in the financial services department, and we're responsible for promoting the Mauritius International Financial Center amongst international investors. I particularly look after the FinTech segment. As you know, there's a lot of talk about FinTech recently, especially with the advent of COVID-19. And I also look after the funds segment. So that's a brief introduction about the EDB. So I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. I guess we will have a lot of questions for you as well, especially India has had a very deep relationship with Mauritius, especially on the fund side. I guess we will get an opportunity to understand how the investees of some of those funds will also probably make, how they will be able to make use of the support from the Mauritius government. So we'll try and find that out during the rest of the conversation. So I'll start with Ajay, and Ajay, you run a lot of cross-border initiatives like you just mentioned, and you do of course work in the FinTech space as well. Can you please talk about the different types of opportunities that you're observing across FinTech, both core FinTech and support to financial services per se? What are the kind of opportunities that you're observing, and are there any specific areas that you think are where Indian FinTechs have an edge over the other international options that are there?
Sure. No, thank you for that one, Avishek. I mean, if even before talking about FinTechs and the kind of opportunity that exists for FinTechs from India outside the borders, I think classic example is someone like a UPI. I don't think too many countries have government beyond creating frameworks and policies, but also being involved in rolling out a technology product, which government of India has done. And with, I think just about a week or so back, I think UPI got launched in Nepal, but also there have been conversations with other governments like Singapore and the likes, where UPI is touted to be one of the biggest software exports that India can potentially have. So a product made by or kind of seeded by the government, for lack of words, if that itself has such a big uptake in several markets, I think looking at how the FinTech story in India has evolved, and because FinTech, if you look at it and just broaden it out, I mean, beyond just core banking and core financial services, I think when it comes to the consumer side of things, or also probably on the enterprise side of things, there are a lot of startups, whether startups that are doing stuff within the broader realm of big data, startups that are working in areas like personalization. A lot of them are already kind of expanding and doing work not only in emerging markets, but also in the EU, in North America. So definitely over the past few years, we have seen a lot of companies successfully kind of enter new market. They still kind of build products in India, but it's not a product built in India for India, but for global markets. Also, a lot of them have successfully gone on to kind of set up, whether it is subsidiaries or entities in other parts of the world, where they are not just trying to kind of ship boxes, but where they are also kind of either co-developing locally or creating more relevant products in those markets, so that it can be seen as a global product rather than an Indian product or an Indian startup which is kind of just selling locally. So yeah, I mean, if you were to kind of further break it down, I guess companies which are working, like I said, areas like customer experience, and customer experience again being very broad. I mean, even people who are building chatbots. I mean, currently I'm dialing on this call from Tanzania, and I've been in East Africa for the past 10 days or so, and I was here for a tech summit in Nairobi, and the kind of conversations that most of the people were having. I mean, in India, if you go back 5 or 8 years, you would have people in conferences talking about stuff that is happening in probably the US, London, and so on and so forth. And for a lot of companies that we meet with, I mean, including the unicorns in this part of the world, like the Flutterwaves of the world, Indian startups and Indian fintechs and what they are building is much more relevant. So there are huge opportunities, I guess, for Indian fintechs to seamlessly enter markets like Africa and probably Middle East and Southeast Asia. But through our experiences, I mean, working even with banks and financial service companies in Europe and North America, they always want to kind of hear what's happening and what people are building in India, because they definitely may not have bitten too much of Indian fintech to kind of get back to their markets, but they definitely see strong products which are coming out of India, whether it is customer experience, whether it is information security, a lot of these areas where Indian fintechs are doing fairly well in a lot of markets internationally.
Understood. So, you know, kind of things like not just core fintech, even things like customer experience, security, all of these things are also important. And in your opinion, there could be fintechs that could solve for these problems in markets, both in Asia, Africa, or even both in the emerging and the developed markets. So that's quite interesting.
Absolutely.
Rajiv,
if I can just add, I mean, if you look at the sponsor tab, which is seen on our screen below, even if you look at one of the more recent unicorns like Perfios, right? I mean, company that has been around for just over a decade, and the work that they are doing in, whether it's in Southeast Asia or the new markets that they are going after. I guess I mean, fintech is a very I would say, as much as it's just 7 alphabets, I guess it's very broad in terms of what all it kind of brings in, and there are a good number of Indian companies that are doing well internationally.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks, Ajay. Rajiv, I'll move on to you next. One of the things that so I come from the world which basically is about financial inclusion. So Caspian Debt was one of the first Indian investors into financial inclusion back in 2004-05, and since then we have invested across a number of other sectors associated with financial inclusion, which slowly is morphing into fintech over a period of time, even within India, because of the use of technology. But what has always been true is that Africa has been an inspiration for financial inclusion for pretty much the entire world. There has been a lot of innovation in Africa, both in financial inclusion as well as financial services in general. Partly, I guess, because of a lot of the unbanked population, a kind of a similar problem that we had in India or have in India as well. Could you please tell us about the opportunities that are there for Indian fintechs when they want to expand into Africa? What could they look for?
Absolutely. Thank you, Avishek. But before I try to answer your question, you mentioned a very important topic during your introduction, and that is about the special relationship that Mauritius shares with India. In fact, this reminds me that our Prime Minister, which always says that India and Mauritius share a very special bond, a special relationship. And we've had India and Mauritius have shared a long history of friendship, which is similar to family ties. And over the years, I think this bond has grown deeper and stronger as well. And in fact, India and Mauritius share the same philosophy when it comes to international trade, a philosophy based on open trade for mutual benefit as well. Let me also quickly elaborate that Mauritius was the first African country to have concluded a free trade agreement with India. And in fact, we had the visit of the Minister of External Affairs, the Honorable Subramaniam Jaishankar, who visited Mauritius. And we also had the visit of, we were quite privileged to have the visit of the Indian Prime Minister Modi a couple of years ago. So this shows the type of relationship that we have. Other than that, from a business perspective, I think it is estimated that close to 100 Indian companies are already have already set up in a number of sectors in Mauritius. So with that, let's go back to your question. Yes, indeed, Africa is well positioned to be the next frontier of growth. The African regional market is almost the same size as the Indian market. And the continent is very rich in terms of natural resources, whether it's arable land. I'm told that 60% of the world's arable land is found in the African continent, and 30% of the world's natural resources are found in Africa. And the good thing also is that 60% of the African population is below the age of 25. So all these indicators shows that there is no doubt that Africa has one of the largest unbanked population in the world. I think some figures will tell you that close to 350 million people do not have access to conventional bank accounts in sub-Saharan Africa. Yet, if you look at the number of Africans having access to internet and smartphone, that number is rising exponentially. According to GSM Association, you will find out that the mobile subscription is expected to reach 615 million by 2025. See, Africans are tech savvy. That is, they are not scared to use new technologies. They are always eager to try new technologies such as mobile payments, fintechs related products, etc. It is also no coincidence that if you look over the last 2 years, we have seen around 7 unicorns that have actually come out of Africa. And out of those 7 unicorns, 5 of them are in the fintech space. We've all heard about the big names such as Chippercash, Flutterwave, Opay, Fowry, etc. They are all companies operating in Africa that have crossed the 1 billion valuation mark, US dollars. So there's also a lot of momentum in the venture capital space as well. We are increasingly witnessing major international players investing in fintech startups, companies in Africa. More and more bigger deals are happening in Africa. In fact, last year alone, while every country was battling with COVID, in Africa, close to $5 billion US dollars of capital was raised. And 2/3 of those funding were in the fintech sector. So again, these are all key ingredients for any fintech companies that are looking for market to expand their presence. In the context of India, as Ajay rightly mentioned, we have also seen how fintech unicorns such as Reseau, Cashfree, Paytm, Bharat PE, and others have grown so fast in such a short period of time. Now, the fact that these companies have progressed so far in such a short period of time shows that they will do well in other markets as well, and that includes Africa. And also the expertise of Indian fintechs are highly regarded internationally. I think it's very well respected in any countries if you look at what Indian fintech companies have done in the past. So I think, yes, Africa is certainly a market that Indian companies should definitely consider if they want to expand their presence internationally. I think there's a lot of opportunities for Indian fintech, especially in the mobile payment space. We've all heard on the success story of M-Pesa, which is Kenya's leading mobile payment company. And although Africa as a continent is still to some extent cash-centric, it is also known it is also well known for its huge adoption of mobile money. Now, this is another trend that is expected to emerge quickly. That is, global online purchases is expected to increase in Africa. More and more people are getting used to, shopping online from their homes at the comfort with their mobile phones. So obviously that will mean a lot of opportunities for for cross-border payment companies. And lastly, if you look at the remittance business, this is also something that should not be ignored. Again, in the context of Africa, the World Bank says that the remittance market in Africa is estimated to be close to 77 billion US dollars. And if you look at the number of companies in the remittance sector as well, such as Chippercash, they have raised significant amounts of money and they're expanding very rapidly in other countries of Africa. So in conclusion, these future trends represent significant opportunities for Indian fintech companies, and Africa is certainly a market that should be considered by Indian fintech companies. Thank you.
Very interesting. So I think the message is clear from Rajiv to all the Indian fintech entrepreneurs. He says that expertise of Indian fintech companies is well regarded and well recognized. So there's already positive sentiment there. He also talked about the huge market potential that is available, and somewhat the fact that these fintech companies were able to grow fast in India is potentially an indication of the fact that they will find similar grounds in Africa as well to expand fast. The other thing, I think one quick point that you also mentioned, Rajiv, is about the whole mobile payments, the M-Pesa story, which was an innovation when it happened, and it was one of those sources of inspiration for the financial inclusion world across all over the world. I think in that sense, Africa has innovated quite a lot. And today in India, if you look at purchases through e-commerce platforms, we now have this big noise and interest around what is now called buy now, pay later, which is basically instead of paying upfront, you convert it into a kind of an equal monthly installment payment, because it is a kind of a layered financial product along with the product that you're purchasing. Africa in that sense has innovated in a lot of markets, and I was because you mentioned M-Pesa, I was reminded of the whole pay-as-you-go model for solar financing for solar home systems that a lot of the companies have innovated in Africa, where they would sell a solar home system upfront, but instead of charging upfront for that, they would charge a subscription fee. So slightly different model, but more like converting upfront capex, making it more affordable by spreading out the payments for that over a period of time. So those kind of innovations have happened in Africa, and there is a possibility that Indian fintechs can leverage that and build on that as well. Now, since we are talking about innovations, I'll go back to you, Ajay. In your opinion, because you have looked at multiple markets, in your opinion, and again, you've looked at both emerging and developed markets and India as well. Do you have a view or kind of an impression that one territory is more conducive to fintech innovation compared when we compare it to India? Is there any particular geography or country that stands out, as a country or a region that has that kind of encourages more fintech innovation than what India has enabled, in spite of the UPI that you mentioned?
Sure. I think I'll just add to something that you mentioned right after Rajiv spoke as well. So in fact, if you look at innovation, I lived in Tanzania way back, 2004 until 2008, which is almost like 15 years back. And even at that time, they had prepaid electricity, prepaid water meters. So taking away a lot of the capex cost away and creating a kind of a subscription kind of a model. So innovation, not just around, and I guess if you look at the whole startup world, I guess one area where there's a lot of innovation happening is financing, whether you look at revenue-based financing or what. So just like you have products innovating and technology, there's innovation happening. There's also modes of financing which are undergoing different kinds of innovation. But coming to your question in terms of opportunities that lie for Indian fintechs overseas, I think you spoke about mobile money, and as much as Nairobi, Kenya, and East Africa is the birthplace of mobile money, I think that's a 2-decade-old story. So even if you talk to whether it's incumbents or people who have been a part of the fintech growth story in this part of the world, I think they believe that while USSD and mobile money did play a role back then, and it still continues to kind of grow, I think there's a lot of innovation that can happen around that. But more importantly, I think there does exist a lot of potential for Indian fintechs to particularly enter emerging markets in Africa, because if you speak to a lot of, whether it's incumbents, whether it is even fintech players like I spoke about, I think they look more towards India rather than the Western world. The problems are similar. If you look at things like financial inclusion, I think a lot of those things which have worked in India should definitely kind of work in this part of the world. So yes, for sure, I guess if you look at Africa is a huge market. Again, 55 countries, more than 1.3 billion people. And the reason why even we are here, I think, and the reason why we call ourselves hindsight ventures in this market, not startup Reseau, is for a simple reason that there are a lot of learnings that we can apply from the Indian market. Going from 2013 to 2020, those 7 years, whatever we would have seen, I think a lot of these things will kind of evolve in the African market over the next 5 to 10 years. Also, if you're looking at consumer spending, if you're looking at the internet behavior, a lot of this is very similar to where India was maybe 5 years back. So Africa definitely is a market for a lot of companies to look at. We keep talking to a lot of people. However, we do not, I mean, our thesis in this market is very different than what we do internationally. We want to see how we can grow and nurture African entrepreneurs. So that's why we keep it very distinct. However, there have been companies with whom we have conversations. If they're looking at insights about this market, getting plugged into the right kind of networks, we anyways do it on a case-by-case basis, depending on how we know the founder and the company. But we definitely see this market as a huge opportunity. The only thing is that it's very fragmented. Either you look at a cluster-based approach like East Africa, but even within East Africa, again, you break it down into 6, 7 countries, and you got to kind of tackle each one of them separately. But I guess if you have done business with enterprises in India and you have loads of patience, I think it shouldn't be very difficult for fintechs to look at this market. Also, in terms of cost, I guess if a dollar can go $10, I mean, from US to India, if you do it, a dollar goes 10, that 10 becomes probably 25 in this part of the world. So just like we look at frugal innovation in India, I guess people here also, they maximize their ability to bootstrap is significantly high. But at the same time, it's very important to kind of be on the ground over here if you really want to succeed. At the same time, Southeast Asia as well. The good thing about, if you were to compare Southeast Asia and Africa for Indian companies to expand into Southeast Asia, again, around 20 odd markets, a lot of Indian fintechs are already doing work in that market, but it takes a lot of time to crack business in Southeast Asia. Also in terms of fintechs, if you look at whether it's Singapore, you look at Hong Kong, I think there are a lot of companies, Indonesia and Malaysia, there is a lot of fintechs which are already operational in the region. So it's more cutthroat for Indian fintechs when they look at that part of the world. But if you look at Africa, there are markets which are evolving where regulations are being laid out so that it's not very difficult for fintechs to plug in. Most of the banks, I mean, even if you look at central bank digital currency, if you look at CBDC, I think there are about 5 or 6 countries in Africa which have already started working towards it. So in that way, the advantage of Africa is that most of the countries are built internet up. So when you talk of the first generation, second generation, and so on, and if you're hitting 5G today, for many of them, the first mode of communication in this part of the world was the mobile phone, and that's where they accessed internet. So a lot of services which have been built on the internet to drive consumer behavior is not a challenge. So if you're looking or doing stuff on the consumer internet side of things with access to finance, again, there's a huge opportunity for fintechs to look at this part of the world, because mobile internet and smartphone penetration is fairly high, and people are used to it. So driving behavior is not a challenge. And because a lot of the banks and central banks are kind of still evolving and learning from markets like India when it comes to fintech, I think the ease with which companies can plug in over here, if they spend the right amount of time with right kind of partners that they work with, I think Africa is a huge opportunity that a lot of fintechs that are probably dialing into this conversation should definitely look at. So yeah.
Great. No, so that's an interesting point because both Southeast Asia or broader South Asia and Africa are in a way, essentially the emerging markets. They seem to have a similar, context. But what you say is interesting. You say that Southeast Asia is probably more cutthroat and a difficult market to crack. Of course, it can be, but after a lot of patience. Africa is relatively simpler, more open to innovation as well, given the CBDC developments that you just mentioned. So that's interesting. So Africa looks like a good place to kind of look at, and that essentially brings me to you, Rajiv. How is Mauritius positioning itself as a Springboard for Africa, and how can, for example, some of the companies who get encouraged by what just Ajay just said, how can you assist Indian fintech companies to enter Africa? And while you are at it, you can probably also talk about a little bit about the fintech, the ecosystem in Mauritius, and how is the regulation helping?
Thank you, Avishek. Yes, indeed, Mauritius is trying to position itself as a springboard for Africa, similar to what Singapore is actually doing for the Asian market, or what London is doing for the European market. Now, Mauritius is very much connected with Africa. We are part of Africa. Mauritius is a member of SADC, new African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and Mauritius was one of the founding members of the African Union. In terms of our strategic location, I think it makes us a natural gateway for Africa. If you look at the position where Mauritius is located, close to Madagascar, so it is in a way a natural gateway for companies wishing to expand their presence in Africa. We have, Mauritius has concluded 44 investment treaties, what we call IPPAs, and you will note that 24 of those IPPAs are with African countries. Same thing for the DTAs that we have signed. We have 52 DTAs globally, and 21 of them are with African countries. You know, more than 50% of those IPPAs, or nearly DTAs as well, are with African countries, which shows that we are very much focused into the African market. Now, in terms of how Indian companies can benefit by using Mauritius. First of all, Mauritius has enjoyed a stable macroeconomic policy for many decades. As a tax-friendly jurisdiction, Mauritius is one of the most attractive destinations for investment and business. We do have an open economy that welcomes foreign investors, enables easy recruitment of foreign talents, professionals, and skilled workers. And we also allow free flow of capital, and we do provide preferential market access to major markets globally. In Mauritius, there are no foreign exchange control. We have a flat corporate and income tax rate of 15%. There are no capital gains tax, no tax on dividends, and interest withholding tax or share transfer tax. You will note that we are multilingual in Mauritius. That is, we speak both French and English are the official languages. So that means Indian companies can target French-speaking African countries through Mauritius, which a lot of fintech companies are already doing. In terms of market access, Mauritius has an extensive reach in terms of market with duty-free and preferential access through its wide network of trade agreements. We have preferential market access to nearly 70% of the world market, and Mauritius provides preferential market access to the huge African market, and is therefore the ideal platform for Indian companies to set up and access the regional market. Mauritius also provides a secure environment and stable policies that are conducive to investment and business, and our relentless drive to continuously improve the business landscape makes Mauritius the topmost business-friendly country in Africa. We are ranked first in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business in Mauritius and 13th globally. So we are very much focused into improving our business environment. And over the years, we have introduced various investment and business-friendly policies that are vital and strong enablers for companies looking to grow in Mauritius and beyond. We have 19 banks in Mauritius, although it is a fairly small population and a small country, consisting both of local and international banks. In the context of India, we have the State Bank of India, SBI, present in Mauritius. Bank of Baroda also is present in Mauritius. And Mauritius also serves as a strong leading international financial center. Investors from across the globe have trusted the Mauritius International Financial Center for their cross-border investment and structuring as well. Last year, we did a research, and it was find out that 80 billion US dollars transited through the Mauritius jurisdiction that went into a number of African countries.
Interesting.
In terms of coming back to fintech, we also have the Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub, which was created a few years ago. And it is the FinTech Association which regroup fintech companies in Mauritius and also helps them how they can enter African countries. Perhaps it's also worth noting that last year, the Africa FinTech Festival was hosted in Mauritius. And I think this year it was Egypt who won the hosting rights. I will just quickly add to what Ajay said. Yes, it is true that there's a lot of opportunities in Africa. At the end of the day, Africa is made up of 54 or 55 different countries. That means there are 54 different challenges and opportunities. And this is where Mauritius comes into the picture in terms of helping Indian companies to go into Africa, because we have developed the expertise in doing business in Africa. See, the way you do business in Africa is very different when you are expanding when you're dealing with other markets. And that is something very important. This will determine how successful you are. And I think Mauritian companies have acquired a lot of experience in terms of dealing with African market. See, if you look at the Mauritius Commercial Bank, which is the largest bank in Mauritius, more than 50% of their profits are actually coming from Africa. So we do have the expertise and know-how in terms of doing business in Africa. So maybe that is something that Indian companies could leverage on.
So I guess what you're saying is that given all the work, I mean, of course, you are a global positioning yourself as a global financial center, but beyond that, there is a huge exposure that you have to Africa, and you are kind of playing a leadership role there, and hence going via Mauritius could be a good option given the favorable regulatory regime that you've kind of consistently had. Now before we kind of go into the audience questions or close, Ajay, one quick question and last question to you for now is, given that we may have got a lot of startups interested in expanding abroad, what advice do you have for Indian fintechs who want to expand abroad? Are there things that they should worry about or focus on?
Sure, I guess while a lot of fintechs might feel that they are ready for any particular market that they want to expand into, I guess the nature of business is such that because banking and financial services is a regulated industry, it's not very easy to just replicate what you've done in one market in another. It requires time and patience. You need to have the right kind of resources to understand the market, not just from a technology perspective, but also you need to have probably local resources, people who understand culture and other nuances of doing business in a particular region. And that's where probably organizations like Rajiv's, I think they come in acting as a bridge, whether it is just for one country like Mauritius and similarly, I guess, for some of the other markets. For example, we are working very closely with the Indian High Commission in few of the markets, and next week actually in Tanzania we are working closely with them to create an India-Tanzania startup corridor of sorts. I guess doing a lot of these kind of things, engaging with governments, either with your home country government in that market or economic development missions and bodies like EDB, Mauritius Development Board. I think it's very important to do. At the same time, it's also very important that you spend time on the ground. One of the challenges that we have seen with a lot of startups is that the first thing they want is for someone else to sell for them. That never happens. If you can't sell, no one is going to sell on behalf of you. People are always looking at finding shortcuts, not spending time, not spending money, not putting in the effort, not trying to understand the market. They just want an agent who can sell and make commission out of that, which is so smart to do. And no one will do that. If you're not willing to if you're not going to value someone else's time and rather believe that if you sell, you make money off me, I don't think that's a great business model to have. And even for someone to kind of believe in you and buy your product, no one will do that. So I think whether you're a fintech or any other sector, technology company looking at breaking into new market, you need to make those trips. Now borders are open, skies are open, visas are being issued. I think hop onto a flight, go there, spend some time. I'll give you an example of a Canadian fintech which we have worked with in India. I wouldn't take their name. Now, in the past, I've spent almost 10 years working in the Canada-India corridor, first with the government, then with the Canadian headquartered, university-backed accelerator venture fund, ran their India business. And I've seen tons of Indian companies who are looking at the Canadian side, and probably like a couple of hundred Canadian companies which I wanted to enter India, but they would never kind of make the effort beyond government-funded missions and programs and so on, where tickets are covered or accommodation is taken care of. They would come on a trade mission, go back. Now, this one company, and the company had not raised a lot of money. The guy came on a government-funded trade mission to India, took them around like you normally do, get them acquainted with the market and whatnot. And while the guy had received some kind of grants and funding from the government, the smart thing he did was, and initially it didn't kind of strike me as to why someone would do that. He hired 5 very different resources, and we were one of them, but we also happened to know a couple of others. And initially when in the call, someone's name would come up like, I mean, either you don't trust me or what is it? I mean, you've hired 5 different people to do the same work for you and you're paying all of them. And most of them, they know each other. Now, after several conversations, a lot of things came to light and whatnot. When I spoke with this guy, his thing was, look, Ajay, the easiest thing for me to do is that, okay, I'm a lending middleware. I already have customers in North America. And easier thing to do would be to find a partner, someone who is strategic, who would push my product in a new market. But I'm not looking at finding a product market fit for what I have. I want to play in the lending space. And I want to understand what the lending landscape in India looks like from multiple stakeholders who are there in it. Someone as an investor, someone as a startup, someone as an accelerator. And rather than just shipping my product as is, I want to understand where the gaps are. And for me, it's the belief that lending in India has challenges that can be solved. And I want to build technology where there's a gap. If it is just probably 1/10 of what the whole market is, I want to just focus on that 1/10 and build something which is specific to India. My passion is lending as an industry and India as a market. And I want to kind of bridge the two and build something for India. If it means building something completely different than what already is my core product, which I am selling in North America, I will do that. But I want to spend the time, energy, next 6 months to 12 months, just to understand wherein lies the gap in lending in India. I want to build a product for that. I don't see a lot of Indian companies doing that. So it requires very different kind of mindset rather than just trying to ship boxes. When gone is there, you're not.
That's a very valid and interesting suggestion. So don't just think about going into another country. Do your do your KYC a little differently. Know your country as well, along with know your customers. So on that note, and a very interesting at the end of a very interesting conversation, I would like to thank Rajiv and Ajay for your time. Pleasure talking to all of you, and I hope that the session participants have also enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Gitanjali, over to you.
Thank you so much, Avishek, and thank you for giving us your time, Avishek, Rajiv, and Ajay. Thank you for joining us today. So with this, it's time to move on to our next session. So don't forget to click on agenda and select next session to join in. And in case you want to network with our partners and other attendees, do check out our People tab. We will be right back with you.
100 रुपये में बिटकॉइन ट्रेडिंग
पॉसिबल है
इम्पॉसिबल
लगी शर्त और हारा तो It's possible on CoinSwitch Kuber. Download करो और Bitcoin में trading start. CoinSwitch Kuber. सिक्का चमकेगा.
Cryptocurrency is an unregulated digital asset, not a legal tender and subject to market risks and price fluctuation risks.
Where there is life, there is hope, there is meaning. But life has its downs as much as its ups. Life is about challenges. Life is about opportunities. Time for joy, time for celebration, and time to introspect. Thankfully, in every one of life's moments, and even beyond life itself, there's LIC. Where there is life, there's always LIC. Zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi.